What's up, my good friend? It's X here, and today we're back with another reaction video. Okay, today we're going to actually dive into one of Mr. Ballen's stories. I actually been wanting to do this for a while. Me and my homeboy actually attempted, or we actually did one. I didn't have the time to work on that video. I didn't. I had to leave within the next day and get to work, and yeah. So, anyways, hold on a second. Just in case if y'all can't hear or not, I'm parked kind of on the side of the highway, but I'm actually in a rest area. I'm in Virginia, and these particular rest areas, I guess they call safety areas. I don't know why, but I can only imagine. Fucking mountains and shit. You do not want to be on the side of the highway. So, yeah, we're about to dive into one of Mr. Ballen's videos. I hope y'all doing alright. Just in case if this is your first time coming across one of my videos, just know, there's all kinds of shit that goes on this channel, alright? So, you're seeing this, don't get too comfortable and used to this, alright? We might just take a 90 fucking degree turn and go left into the woods or something. I don't know, okay? So I'm just throwing that out there. Shout out to all y'all. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay? Because we can.
Today, we're going to look at 3 places you can't go and people who went there anyways. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do and we upload once a week.
Alright, yeah, definitely. I kind of forgot to mention that. This particular one of Mr. Ballen's videos is top 3 places you cannot go and people who went there anyways, okay? He does this, so if y'all like that type of stuff, subscribe to him, okay? Okay, because sometimes we go through that, but we like to span shit out because I'm going to tell y'all right now, the last reaction video I did with the scary shit, we had to wait a little bit of time. Just for any of my old school, my classic OG subscribers on the channel who's about that zombie Andreas. Your boy hasn't went back to that because, dude, I don't know if enough time has passed. I have PTSD with that game, okay? That's why we haven't went back to it. I do have it on this particular computer. Oh yeah, and I'm in the truck too, but to play zombie Andreas in the fucking truck. At work. Okay, so yeah, subscribe to him if y'all want to see that best storytime teller of all. Yes, best storyteller of all time. Let's do this.
If that's of interest to you, please sneak into the like button's doomsday bunker and remove all the labels on their canned goods so they have no idea what they're eating. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories.
Let's do it. Let's fucking do it. It's the first one. It's the first one. One for the really? That is it's pretty ironic, ain't it? You know? Boy's out on the road right now, and why does the first one have to be one for the road? Can only imagine. Could only imagine.
Late on the night of Friday, September 18th, 2015, a 45-year-old man named Lattori Barman stumbled down a pitch-black street in a small village in central India. Lattori was stumbling because he was very, very drunk. He and his wife had spent most of the night together out at this local fair, having loads to drink and partying, and then at some point his wife had actually broken off and gone to her parents' house in another village, but Lattori had decided to stay out and keep the fun rolling. So once she was gone, Lattori had gone to a liquor store and had more to drink there. And then now he had finally decided he had had enough, he was extremely intoxicated, and he just wanted to get back home. And so as Lattori stumbled down this road, he could really only see maybe a foot in front of him, not only because he was so drunk, but also because the streets in his village did not have lights, and so it was totally dark. However, this wasn't unusual for Lattori. I mean, this is where he lived. He'd walked this street many, many times and knew how to navigate without any lighting. And so he just continued walking along, business as usual. But what did strike him as odd is that, late at night here, as he's making his way home, he thought it was weird that there was a lot of people out on the road. He couldn't really see them because, again, there's no lighting, but he could definitely hear them. Like there was people sort of all over the place, and he also sort of in his intoxicated state saw some lights that, maybe were vehicles sort of moving around. So there was like more activity on this road than usual. But at the same time, like, this is a main road, and sometimes there's lots of people and cars on it, even late at night. So this didn't really strike him as odd enough to stop and investigate. He just kept on walking towards his house. But as he's walking through with all this commotion all around him, at some point he goes to step, but instead of his foot striking the ground again, there's nothing there. And suddenly he feels himself falling, and he smashes into the ground, and now truly it's pitch black. He can't see anything. And he blacks out. The following morning, a group of villagers were walking down the same street that Latore had been on the night before, and as they were walking, now in broad daylight, they looked up ahead and they noticed something odd right in the middle of the street. And at first they had no idea what it was, and so they walked closer to it to get a better look. And as they walked up on this thing, they instantly understood what it was. And they screamed and ran to tell authorities. It would turn out the reason Latore was hearing and seeing all these people and, vehicles on the street the night before, which seemed sort of out of place, was because there was actually a construction crew repairing potholes in that road. This road was known for being very dangerous because of these deep potholes. And Latore, as he was stumbling along, accidentally fell into one of these deep potholes, smashed the ground, and was knocked unconscious.
Hold on a second. Me as a truck driver, I'm very, very familiar with potholes. But what kind of pothole is big enough to swallow a whole goddamn man? I don't know if that's a pothole. That's a fucking crater? I don't know. An abyss? A mini abyss? That is, it's pretty unfortunate. That is why, I guess in different countries, I hear in different countries that drinking out in public is kind of like somewhat acceptable or allowed. It really depends on where you go. I don't understand that. I do not understand that, because when it gets time to go home and you're on foot, that is a bad mix, all right? One of the first times I ever even did any type of drinking, I remember I didn't have a car. At the time, I didn't even have a bike. So I walked probably probably a quarter mile to like half a mile to a liquor store, right? Picked me up one, and then I don't remember exactly how, but somehow on the way back, I was super, super lit, okay? And I just remember doing this shuffle walk and stuff, because I was so lit to the point where I could not walk how I normally wanted to walk. And that's one of the things I remember. I remember dude, I'm not even walking straight. I hope nobody's looking at me or stuff, But yeah, I'm trying to walk back home, and I just, but everything is so hazy and shit. So just from that one experience alone, and I did make it back home and just passed the hell out. But just from that one experience alone, which is a lighthearted experience, I know, get your ass home before any type of drinking starts. Okay, that's how I even know that in clubs and all that extra shit, bars, no.
And because this worksite was so chaotic and there was all this, movement and there was bad lighting, none of the crew saw Latore fall in. And Latore, even after, coming to inside the hole, was too drunk to get out of the hole. And so at some point that night, the construction crew reached the pothole that Latore was in. They didn't see him, and they poured molten tar into the hole and then rolled over it with a roller, all with Latore inside the hole. And so after they were done and moved on to the next pothole, Latore, in his final moments, tried to kind of pull himself out of this tar, but he only managed to get his hand up and out of the tar.
Dude, could you imagine? That? It reminds me immediately, I ain't even gonna lie, and I'm not trying to make fun of this situation, But it reminds me of that one mission in San Andreas where you finally got to, I think, San Fierro, right? That city-like area, and not Las Venturas, San Fierro, and you had that construction job where you had to push one of the porta potties. That's what this shit reminds me of. But it's actually something that happened in real life. This is quite insane. This is quite insane. I wonder who would be at fault here. I mean, obviously the dude who was drinking, right? But are there any regulations for the construction workers to actually look inside the hole before they pour the goddamn stuff? No, I don't think so, right? They know it's a goddamn hole. They need to patch it up. It's big enough to swallow a whole goddamn man. How long has this pothole been around for? You know what I'm saying? Like, what the hell? It reminds me too, man, of one of my last few trips to Illinois. Illinois has one of the fucking worst roads, period, dude. Fucking period. It's so bad up there to the point where your boy had to actually Google and look at, ask Google, like, why is Illinois' road so bad? And it's apparently because of these freezing and thawing cycles. I did not know that would actually be a thing. So freezing and thawings and continuously doing that damages the integrity of, this type of material, asphalt. So, man, if y'all are ever driving through Illinois, be careful. Take your time and definitely watch the road and swerve as much as you can to avoid them shits, because I can only imagine how many mechanics or mobile mechanics that bring tires to people get paid, because man, dude.
And so the next day, the group of villagers that walked down the road, what did they see? They saw Lattori's hand poking out of the ground. Lattori's body was removed from the street and he was given a proper burial. There were 2 construction workers who were on duty on the night of Lattori's death who were ultimately arrested and charged with culpable homicide. As for Lattori's family, authorities would give them a compensation payment for Lattori's death, but it was only worth approximately $760 US.
What the hell? Oh, hell nah, bro. I mean, damn, that's like a slap in the face. I gotta forgive me. I gotta take that off. It was cold earlier. I gotta keep my windows up so they can properly hear me. It started getting a little steamy, okay? But I don't know, man, about that settlement right there. It's like the Indian government decided, like, all right, he was drunk. He fell into the hole himself. We normally don't look in the holes, and nobody should be in the holes, right? So we'll do something. But that much, $760 of American money, 570 rupees. That's it in the face. You know what I mean? So, what did we all learn here? I mean, I told you earlier. I guess we don't have to say it. But just in case, if y'all didn't hear, take your ass home when you want to drink, okay? You'll save a whole lot more money that way too. And your life.
Last year, we launched a brand new podcast and saw for ridiculous anime drivers, and its new adapted burst can also
Heat rises. Cold air descends.
Around 2:30 p.m. on November 28, 2015, a man pulled into his driveway in the extremely rural city of Huron, California. He had been away overnight, and so as soon as he got out of his car, he walked right up to his porch and checked his doorknob to make sure his door was still locked. He found that it was, which was a relief. Then he unlocked it and stepped inside. However, as soon as he was inside his house, he just stopped and listened and kind of looked around. So this neighborhood that he lived in was not a safe place to live. In fact, over the past year, this guy's house had been broken into multiple times. However, he had not reported any of these break-ins to the police because he himself was wanted for felony drug possession. And so instead of getting the police involved, the man had sort of begun doing his own home security. Basically, every time he came home, he would sort of take a minute, listen, make sure nobody was in the house, and then actually sweep the house to make sure, nobody was there and that nothing had been stolen. And so as the man stood there in his doorway listening, he couldn't hear anything and Nothing looked disturbed inside of his house, so he flipped on the lights, he walked into his living room and put his keys and his wallet down, and then he began doing this kind of systematic sweep through his house, checking to make sure there was nothing wrong. Checked the windows, none were broken, goes to the back door, it's still locked, he's in his kitchen, he's in, his dining room, there's nothing out of place. He did notice, however, that his mail that was sitting on one of his tables looked like maybe it had been rummaged through, but at the same time, he couldn't remember if maybe he had been kind of sloppy when he had gone over his mail before he had left the night before. So he didn't know if the mail was a sign of a break-in, but it didn't seem like it. And so after completing his sweep and feeling confident that the house was, in good order, he sat down and he relaxed. And he felt like, it had been a while since the last break-in, and maybe he was being a bit too paranoid. But for now, he decided, his security protocol was good enough, and he wouldn't make any changes quite yet. And he just picked up the remote, turned on the TV, and settled in for the night. However, after only a couple of minutes, the man realized his house was pretty cold, and he was starting to shiver. So he stood up, and he walked over, and he turned on his heat, and then he sat back down on his couch. Then, about a minute later, this awful, high-pitched scream ripped through the house. It would turn out the homeowner's paranoia around break-ins was totally justified, because the night before, while he was gone, someone had tried to break into his home. 19-year-old Cody Caldwell had snuck onto the roof and attempted to enter this man's house through the chimney. But,
dude, how many times have we heard the chimney stories? How many times? Maybe y'all haven't heard it enough, but me? I don't know, dude. I think I've heard over 10 chimney stories where you should not go down the goddamn chimney. And it's crazy because it reminds me of that whole Santa story. We came down the goddamn chimney fucking looking for cookies and milk and shit. And then once he actually found the cookies and milk, then he would leave the presents. Wouldn't that trigger something in the kid's mind if the parents didn't set the kid straight? Damn, what if I do that? Take the same way Santa takes. And see what they got. I don't know, man. But apparently chimneys are one of the worst ways to get into a house, okay? Because, I don't know, it's not like a straight shot down, you know what I'm saying? Somehow it gets narrower and narrower and narrower to the point where you get stuck. So, I'm thinking that Mr. Ballen is talking about, this dude turned on the AC. The heat. And one of whoever's in the house got stuck in the vent. So now you're stuck in the vent, got hot ass air blowing on you, and then you're in a closed space, so that heat has got to be somewhat unbearable to the point where the dude's great. I don't know if it would work out like that. I don't. But I guess we're about to find out.
Stuck about halfway down. And when the man came home and did his safety patrol and checked his house and couldn't hear or see anything, what he didn't realize was Cody was still absolutely stuck in the chimney and alive. He just wasn't making any sound. And then, when the homeowner got cold and turned on the heat, what he literally did was he started an actual fire in his fireplace.
Good Lord,
and after setting this fire, Cody, who's wedged in the chimney right above this fire, began breathing in the smoke, and in his panic, he began to wiggle around and sink further and further down into this chimney, which is angled, and so he would have gotten more and more stuck until he was basically in the fire and then caught on fire. That scream was him burning alive inside of the chimney. And the man who owned the house had no idea what was going on. He just heard these screams. And then finally, when he got the fire put out and he called the police and the first responders showed up, it was already too late because Cody had died from severe burns and smoke inhalation.
Man, this got pretty dark. The first story was pretty dark, but this shit right here, man, this is another chimney story that I'm hearing. And I know it's a new one because I haven't heard about this guy right here. This is self-explanatory from, learning our lesson here. So we're not even going to get into that. But, god damn it. Let's move on. Good Lord, what the hell is this going to mean?
On the evening of January 19th, 2022, a 40-year-old mother named Anna Uskova set up a camera and some lights at the edge of a clearing in the woods in St. Petersburg, Russia. Then she focused the camera on the spot in the clearing where she, her husband, and her children were about to perform a very important religious ceremony. So to set the scene here, it was late at night, so it's dark, it was snowing, it's totally freezing. This is the dead of winter out in the middle of Russia. This is a cold, cold environment. But this is when this ceremony was done. In the dead of winter, all over Russia. This was not just something Anna's family was doing, this is like a Russian thing. On this day, all over the country, people would perform this sort of purification ritual that was designed to revitalize their bodies and souls and help them ward off evil spirits for the new year. Now, typically...
I never knew Russians had that kind of, a part of like a culture like that. That's interesting. It's quite interesting. Now, I know Russians to be very, very hardy people. And I mostly know that because of the environment that they live in, just like Mr. Ballen said. The company who I'm working for, they are Russians. And meeting them for the first time, very, very cool people. Very cool people. But they do not act the way us Americans do. They're straight to the point. They don't do any small talk as much, you know what I'm saying, unless you're really cool with them. I know there's this one mechanic who I know, his name is Roman. Me and him got really tight and cool. But before then, it was there's definitely some kind of barrier between them. But in Illinois, where these people, where they're based at, like people who work for my company or the people who have the company in Illinois. When I first met them back in January, that type of cold right there, bro, I was in this particular truck. Thank God the heat in this truck works, but apparently this truck cannot keep this truck warm enough in those Illinois temperatures. And it made me think, I'm like, damn, these people are probably used to this shit. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I wanted to bring that up because, Russians are very special people, And it just makes me think about, how good we have it, too, in America. Because we have AC, we have, heat when we need it and stuff. But what about extreme temperatures and conditions that you have to go through? You know what I'm saying? That will change how people move in this world, I would think. Let's continue and see where this goes.
They would perform this big ceremony in a group setting with their church. But this year, Anna decided she wanted to hold this ceremony privately, with just her family kind of out in the woods by themselves. It would be more intimate, and the kids would feel, a bit more involved than they normally did. And so far, it was going great. They had found the perfect location. It was stunningly beautiful. It really felt like the best place to perform the ceremony. But it was kind of odd that when they got there, there was no other families there. They had this place to themselves, which was just crazy. But they thought, great, this is even better for us. This is going to be the perfect ceremony. So while Anna's husband finished prepping everything they would need, Anna hit record on the camera, and then Anna walked out from behind the camera, and you see her come into frame, and she walks over to her kids. And now her kids are going to be performing this ritual the same way Anna and her husband would be, and it's clear they're pretty nervous. Now, they've done this before, but still, this ritual is not very comfortable. It doesn't feel very good, at least in the moment. And so Anna knew this, and so she knelt down with her kids, and she kind of reassured them that they were brave, they were courageous, they could do this, and she was going to go first. And they could see that, once mom did it, they would know that they could do it too. And so at some point, after kind of giving her kids a pep talk, Anna stood up, she walked over to the area that was designated for this ceremony, and then as the camera's rolling, she stood there, she drew a cross on her chest, then she stepped forward and kind of jumped feet first,
What?
And then disappeared. 1 second passed with no sign of Anna, and that was okay. But then 2 seconds passed, and there was still no sign of Anna.
Hold up a minute. That's what the hell they do? when I brung up what I was saying about Russians, I kind of wanted to talk about this whole cleansing, purification thing, because that's what shocked me a little bit. Hearing that Russians have like a kind of a culture that has something like that. I thought only certain denominations, not denominations, but certain cultures of people do stuff like that. But I did not know Russians had something like that going on. But jumping into a goddamn cutout piece of water or cutout piece of ice to dive into water when it's already freezing balls off temperatures outside. You know what I'm saying? And listen, when I tell you the shit that I went through in Illinois back in January, it literally hit -4 degrees. So when I had to gas up this truck at one point, just being outside for less than a minute without any gloves. As a matter of fact, I had gloves, but the gloves were somewhat wet. That's what fucked me up. But I took the gloves off. Still, your fingers get numb to the point where, like, damn, dude, I better hurry up and do something real quick, or I'm not gonna have no fingers left. That's how bad it was. And in Russia, it's probably worse. So the fact that they're submerging their whole body in a fucking body of water under some ice that they just fucking cut out like a fucking coffin box. You gotta see where this goes.
Seconds passed, and still no Anna. And at that point, her husband and her kids began to scream. So what Anna and her family didn't understand, or at a minimum just did not fully appreciate, was that when they did this ceremony with their church every year, the church took a lot of effort to make sure the location they chose for the ceremony, that it was totally safe. And on top of that, they often had medical personnel on standby, just in case. But Anna and her family had not done either of those things. The location they chose was no doubt stunningly beautiful, but the reason it was deserted is it was a terrible spot for this ceremony. And then also, they didn't have any medical personnel on standby. The ceremony that Anna and her family were taking part in is known as the Russian Orthodox Epiphany, and it's a type of baptism. Basically, people all over Russia at this time of the year will carve a cross-shaped hole in the ice over a body of water, and then one by one, they'll jump into the water and then emerge again, baptized, purified. And so Anna and her family had done that. They had carved the cross in this frozen body of water. But the reason this spot was a terrible spot to do this ceremony and why it was totally deserted is because they had chosen a raging river. That yes, it's frozen, but underneath, that river is still flowing, and it's a very deep river. And so the second Anna stepped into the water feet first, she got swept away. But they didn't have a way for her to re-emerge. It's all frozen ice. And so the second she went under into the pitch black water, she was gone. And within a couple of seconds, her family is expecting her to come back up again, but of course she didn't. And so they began screaming, and Anna's husband actually leapt into the water, but he actually stopped himself really quickly because he felt that current pulling him. And so he got out, and very quickly, a search was launched for Anna, but there was no hope. They couldn't find her, and in fact, to this day, they still have not recovered her body.
Dude, could you imagine if they let the kids go in first? There's a lot of shit to say about this, and I'm just gonna go off the top of my heart because that's the most authentic way. But the shit that people do for what they deem religious, spiritual, it's quite stupid. It's quite stupid, I believe sometimes. Because like to have accidents happen, right? Accidents happen. And she wanted to do this privately, but how do you not suspect or think of something like that? You know what I mean? Like underneath, what's going on underneath this cutout piece of water or ice that you're about to dive into? Damn, dude. Yo, his Mr. Ballen's videos always hits me so damn hard, yo. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I feel bad for his family, you know. Hey man, there's still a lot. You know, this whole religion thing, it's up to y'all to decide what y'all want to do with your lives. But I don't know, man. I don't see people waking up yet. Me, of course, and I've said this multiple times, so I try to prevent myself from going too much into it because, again, it's already been said. I'm already at a certain point in my life where that shit, I do not give it any energy. I just take what comes to me and I live my life out. My whole thing with spirituality is thinking that, hey, I'm a piece of God and God has experienced life through this particular person. Now, the type of life that we are confined to, I don't think it was intentionally supposed to be this way, you know, by God's standards. Something happened, but nevertheless, you continue moving the way that you feel that you should move in life, and you figure things out as you go. You know what I'm saying? Something inside builds up. Something builds up inside of you where you know if you're going in the right direction or not. And that feeling that I'm talking about is, I know it's got to be different for everybody. But for me, it could be very, very subtle and easy to miss. But over the years and over time, like I've been acclimated and got used to this particular feeling. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I'm seeing this whole thing with God, spirituality. There's a lot more to say about it. Of course, you know, my whole past dealing with the paranormal comes into play. But you shouldn't have to do things like this, you know, to prove a point. Um, you know how to cleanse yourself as a person. You know what you got to do to make yourself a better person. Diving into a goddamn freezing body of water, I don't know about that. I do not know about that. You know, and then also the more light-hearted version, getting dunked by some kind of preacher who, you know, like goes home and takes all the, you know, the funds from the church, buys luxury cars, and sends their preacher wife off on vacations with that particular money. You know what I mean? So we're done here, y'all. We're done here. You know, sometimes I've said this before. Sometimes when these videos have a bad ending and a tone, like it fucks with me. It definitely does. So I gotta wind down. This is the end of the video. Appreciate y'all for watching this far. And stay tuned. Oh yeah, and just to throw it out there, I know it said quite some time ago, that I wanted to do a video of me making a beat, you know, like as live as I could do it. There's probably an opportunity for me to do it on TikTok live because somehow I hear that everybody's able to do live TikTok. I'm not ready to get really into that right now, so I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way. Just record myself doing the beat. I might do it on Twitch. I don't know yet, but stay tuned for that. The reason why I haven't did that yet is because my computer that I had the program on, I wiped it clean, and I've always been sketched out to go and find me a cracked version of that program. You know what I mean? But now I have it on this computer and that other computer, so stay tuned. And even if I don't do that video just yet, I'll post or make some kind of like, I don't know, maybe some kind of music video with something in the background with the beat that I made. You know what I'm saying? I have a couple videos with some music that I made, probably with a static background. I'm gonna do something along the lines of that, okay? If I don't do the me actually making the beat right then and there. So stay tuned for that. Love y'all. Take care of yourselves. Be safe out here. I'm gonna catch y'all next time. Peace out, y'all.